Hey everybody, welcome back. Mike White here. We're getting ready to start our session 6. We're on the second side of this thing. We're past the halfway point, and I'm excited to be here and get everybody moving on what I consider to be two of the really important parts of our conversation. These two sessions, session 6 and session 7, are dedicated to working with realtors. And this is probably the one area I get the most questions on. It's probably the area where we have most of the things that we have done, and most of the areas where it can change dramatically. The good news with this is we're going to talk about some things and give you some insights that you can use that'll set you apart from some other people. Now, if you haven't gone through the CD sets and listened to them, or if you haven't taken really good notes and gone through them, this would be a great time to refresh yourself with those, because you'll find a lot of the information that we're going to cover here, a lot of the specific things that we're going to talk about are going to be tied directly to a lot of the information on those CDs. And you will also find that those CDs make a great point for you to share with your realtor partners. A lot of times you can point to those CDs or even give them to your realtor referral partners to listen to, and have them go through them and pick out the areas of business that they would like, would like to work on. So really important thing to tie together this particular session with those CDs and some of the other materials that are on the website and white papers and articles that we've written in the past. So we're going to get started today with the realtors and understand that the lender relationship to a realtor is a key component. And the fact that, realtors don't often understand the benefits of having a great referral partner until something comes up. And I think what we have to do and how we have to work, we have to create an environment where we're approaching this from a value position, and that we're bringing value to the realtor in a way that they realize that we are providing them infinitely much more value than they're bringing to the table for us. When you can be the one that provides more value, then you're the one never in fear of loss of the relationship. So let's explain this in a way about the expectations. Is the fact that when it comes to the realtor, are we explaining to them what the expectations are of this relationship? Do we have a plan on how things will work, and are we going to hold ourselves accountable to whatever this plan is? Because clearly, without having, something clear and something focused, that we're not going to be able to attack the business in a meaningful way. Now, normally in this particular part of the session, I put a poll out there, and since there's not many of us on here, we can go forward. The reality of this has to be, we need to look and we need to be clear on what does the realtor mean to our business. So let's start out with this. Now, I'm not going to run the flash poll. I'm just going to ask the question so that you can think for yourselves on this one. Is what percentage of purchase lead referrals do realtors control? And I want you to think about this and write yourself down a number to what you think. And some of you, if you've been through the CDs, you're going to realize that, we've covered this already. But at the end of the day, realtors control only about 30% of the purchase lead referral business. Again, 30%. It still remains the best source for one particular area of business. But it is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the only place that you can get business. I don't want it to be that I'm not a big proponent of getting realtor business, because I believe realtor relationships are significant, that it is really imperative to have some key realtor relationships. On the other hand, what we have to do is understand that this is not all of where our business comes from. It is only about 30% of where purchase deals, come from that area. And so we have to be aware that while it's important that they only control about 30%. Now, the other thing is some people approach this as the 80-20 rule, and they say that 80% of the business is controlled by about 20% of the realtors. Well, I probably say it's more in line with 90-10 or 95-5, that the people who are in control of this business, whether they be buyer's agents for bigger realtors or whether they be realtors themselves, there are some people that just control business differently. Some people control more of the business than others do. I've had one realtor in the past that they would send me 20 to 25 leads a month, and I would go through those leads and we'd be able to close 5, 6, 7 loans, which was pretty good. But I also had other realtors that would send me 1 or 2 leads a month, and I would close both of those. So in one case, I was closing about 25 to 30% of the referrals from one person, and the other realtor, I was closing 100% of the business that they were sending me. And so some realtors control different percentage of their clients. Again, some people are more in control of their situation, and it matters more to them who they go to for their financing, and others it doesn't. Either way, what I want you to do and what I want you thinking about when it comes to the realtor situation here is the relationship that you're going to establish has to be based so it equals that there is value working in conjunction with opportunity, that you're both working with each other. And the fact that when you're working with each other, that you're providing each other opportunities, okay, and that becomes a really big piece of the puzzle. So understand that when we look at this and we look at these relationships, that how amazingly critical all of this becomes, because if you're not looking at this in the side of value, and if your systems are not geared in support of that relationship, then all you're doing is begging for business, and that is not something that is going to work for you really well over the course of time, which is why most realtor mortgage people relationships have a very short shelf life. That's why they only last until the next shiny object comes along, or until there's an issue on the first deal that you do together where a problem comes up. Sometimes the likely person to get thrown under the bus when something goes wrong with a transaction is the mortgage professional. And a lot of that is not necessarily so. And what we hope to do over this session and the next session to follow is put you in a position that we build a real relationship and something that will stand a test of time, something that is going to be there more than just a few transactions or a few months. Again, I'm not going to put up the poll question up there, but I want you to think to yourselves, how many opportunities do full-time realtors get in front of every month? Because until we understand some of what the realtor's business is and how they go through their filtration system, until we know that, we don't see the size and scope of the available pool of what we can do. And so I want to focus on this shortly just so that you can see, hopefully you've got a number, but we're talking about realtors who list themselves, according to the National Association of Realtors, as full-time realtors. The average hot target the realtor comes in is 16 to 23 people a month. The average number of contacts that realtor makes is between 16 and 23 people a month. Most of you, I'm sure, didn't think it was anywhere near that many. But according to the National Association of Realtors, there's some very simple math. And herein lies the challenge. The average realtor comes in contact with these 16 to 23 people a month, and they narrow it down to the 2 or 3 what they consider to be hot targets. Now, the scary part about this is we don't know what filtration system that they've used to narrow down these targets. And for the most part, these targets include both buyers and people willing to list houses. So when you look at this and say, here's what happens, they get these 16 to 23 people, and then over the course of that month, they narrow it down to these 2 or 3 hot targets, and it leads to about 2/3 of a closed transaction. So understand, after working all of this information, your average full-time realtor goes through a process that yields them about based upon, a national demographic. It's an average based upon realtors who call themselves full-time professional realtors. And so if you divided, and here's a really scary part, if you divided the total number of real estate transactions by the total number of active real estate licenses, that number would be far, far lower. So obviously you need to look at each realtor, and you need to look at their situation. We've talked about this. If you've seen the blog posts and the white papers that I've put out there the last few months, that we've covered the different places where you can find the information about your realtors and where you can find out how much business that they're doing and how to do it. And if any of you have questions about that, you can email us and we'll send you the link and how to go about finding that. But it's been in the white papers and the blog that blog posts that we've been doing. So understand that we're getting to this number. And if we're looking at just full-time traditional people or full-time traditional agents, these numbers are really skewed to a point where I have a realtor who has the likelihood, if they're working full-time, of only closing 8 transactions in a year. Seriously, what does that bode for me? Because we've got more, this isn't just opportunities. If they're only controlling and involved in 8 transactions, that doesn't mean they've controlled all of those 8. If they're only capable of controlling 30% of their purchase side transactions, that number grows far, far lower. So look at this on the traditional view, okay? We're only getting in front of their select buyers. And buyers are only half of a realtor's business. So think about this. If half of a realtor's business is the purchase side of a transaction, then that means they're only doing 8 transactions a year, or 2/3 a month. Then that means they're only getting in front of 1/3 of a purchase transactions a month. And if they can only control 30% of that, you're dealing with about an 11% chance of getting a loan from that particular referral partner. Well, think about that. 11%. How many realtors would I need based upon that realtor controlling 11% of those referrals? How many realtors would I need to get to the fact that I was closing 5 to 7 loans a month? You'd need dozens. And that's where the challenge comes into play. And that's why I want you to look at how we want to go and how we want to work so that we're not just getting in front of the few selective people that the realtor wants to get us in front of, that we're getting in front of all the missed opportunities. And here's where we're going to have to build. The other side, in other words, the missed opportunities. First thing we have to address is, what happens to the 13 or 20 not so hot people? In other words, if the realtor's coming in contact with 16 to 23 people a month and they're narrowing it down to 2 to 3, what happens to those 13 to 20? Is there anything that we're doing? Is there any way that we are involved with this realtor? Does that realtor know that there is significant value in us being engaged with those 13 to 20 people? So one of the things that we've talked about is, do we have a plan for them? Those 13 to 20 people, why would that realtor send you those people? Why would they bother giving you that information? And the answer is, you need to have a plan for those people. You need to have some sort of a incubator for those people. You need to be able to get, in line and in front of those people so you can do something which, oh, by the way, brings them back. Because here's the point. If you get in front of those 13 to 20 people, and what if only one of those people, only one, you're able to bring back to that realtor, or you're able to do a loan for, because you pre-qualify them, you pre-approve them, you help them through the process. Somebody the realtor thought might not have been able to do something, you're able to do something for them. If only one of those people comes back, it's 10 times better than what that realtor can offer you. Can you imagine that? You would do 10 times better working with the cast-offs from that realtor than you would working on purpose with the limited number of people that they could actually refer you. I want that to sink in for a second, okay? The average realtor is 16 to 23 people a month. They narrow it down to 2 or 3, of which they generate 2/3 of a transaction, half of which will be a buy-side opportunity, 30% of which they can refer. That narrows down to an 11% chance of getting a loan that month. Now we take 13 to 20 people. We incubate them. We stay in touch with them. We communicate with them. We provide value for them. If we can only get 10% of those people, 10%, to choose us as the lender of their choice, we'd be doing 10 times better. And that's what I need you to be aware of. I need you to be aware that there are, you can go in there and build a relationship, and you can ask a realtor for business, and you can sit back and wait for them to call you with something. Or you can engage in a plan that's comprehensive, that covers everybody. It incorporates a plan for everybody that they talk to, so that you get to filter everybody. You get to make the choice how you want and when you'll work with these people, what you're going to put forward. And understand that by doing that, not only are you going to improve your odds of doing a loan, but the likelihood is you'll end up bringing back more people to that realtor than that realtor ever refers you. Think about that. Think about the fact that if they're only able to refer you 3 or 4 transactions over the course of the relationship, you could conceivably bring back 3 or 4 transactions to them on a monthly basis. It becomes very, very interesting to see the rate of return when you start working and you start keeping track about how and when you control all the opportunities. Now let's go to the other side of the equation, because here's something that we haven't even talked about. Focusing focusing on the listings. Again, remember, we talked about the agent. They come in front of those opportunities. They narrow it down. Well, half of the agent's business is overlooked. Half of the business that agent gets in front of are listings. If we're not making an effort to get in front of those listings, what are we doing? We already know that a majority of the people who are selling a house, a huge percentage of those people are selling a house and they're going to go buy another house. And it's likely that they're going to need a loan, and they're going to do it in your service area. Yet very few mortgage people spend any time at all focusing on a realtor's listing. Well, it's half of an agent's business. Now, why do you want to get in touch with that? Well, let me give you some simple math. If 60% of all people select the first person to do business with that they deem to be skilled and competent of their area of need, 60%. Well, that means 40% of the people go on and to do business with the second or third choice. Seriously. So if you're the first person, you've got a 60% chance. If you're in the second wave of either 2, 3, or 4 persons, you've got at least you're part of the 40%. If you combine those two, it means if you contact the listings of your agents, you got a 26% chance of getting that loan, regardless of whether you were first or whether you were in that second group. Because on average, sometimes you're going to be first and sometimes you're not. It more than triples the results. Again, 26%. Why in the world would you not engage? Now, here's the other interesting point. If we do help us pick your new neighbor, we engage in the neighbors-only open house. We engage in any of the strategies, whether they be the first-time home seller strategy or the forever home strategy. We get the neighborhood involved in any way, shape, or form. Statistically speaking, for every 40 houses that you communicate with, you're going to find another 2/3 of a transaction. So what does that mean? By getting the neighbors involved, you can double the possibilities. You can find a buyer for that house. You can find a new listing. You can find somebody that wants to refinance. So when we start looking at realtors, you have to pay attention to the fact that a vast majority, an overwhelming majority of the mortgage professionals who market to realtors are in search of one thing. And believe it or not, the thing that they're searching for is the smallest piece of the pie. I want you to think about that. I want you to really focus on that. Because traditionally, again, you're going after the smallest thing that they control. That one small piece of business, that buyer-controlled lead, turns out to be the smallest piece of business. You can do better contacting their cast-offs. You can do better working their listings. Heck, you can do better marketing to the neighbors surrounding a listing. All of those will produce more loans for you, believe it or not, than working with a buyer referral from that agent. Unbelievable, but true. The people who generate huge referral volumes from their realtor referral partners are not doing so because people are calling them on the phone every day saying the realtor told me to call you. That is a small fraction of the business that they uncover. by incubating those 16 to 23 other those people, by working the listing side, by working the neighbors around those listings, you're engaging many more opportunities than you would just asking that realtor to refer you those opportunities when they can. So we have to improve the odds. I want you to collect everyone you can. Collect everything. You have nothing but time. You can call those people, you can communicate with those people, you can email those people, you can send them mail. Contact and communicate with everyone that you can. One of the things I want to share again is using the 3x3x3. Well, what does that mean? Well, I talked about it, and I'll talk about it again. Communicating 3 times in 3 days. Once a week for 3 weeks, once a month for 3 months. A simple system like that that says, anytime I have any type of communication or contact information, I have to have a follow-up plan. What is my follow-up plan? We have to create a certain amount of urgency. That's follow-up, which means that's why I call 3 times in 3 days. People will realize that you are serious. You call them once, certain level of seriousness. Call them twice in 2 days, even more so. They've figured out if by the time you call them the 3rd time in 3 days that you're pretty serious. And even if that doesn't generate a response, then we go to the next level. Once a week for 3 weeks. Why? Well, the response to you is, why not? Until they tell you to stop calling them, why would you stop? Until you've communicated with them. You know this is somebody, regardless of how weak the lead may be, it's an opportunity. It takes 30 seconds to 3 minutes to make this phone call. Why wouldn't you do it? The final piece to this is once a month for 3 months. That's why I call it the 3x3x3. Once a day for 3 days. Once a week for 3 weeks. Once a month for 4 months. Then, if you want, throw them away. You've done more than enough to try to reach those people. Because it's one thing to follow up. It's another thing to follow through. And that's often the place that makes all the difference. Because you will not believe the number of times that further down that person is able to finally, they weren't ready to buy, they got engaged, it was a preliminary situation. Most people go through a process when they first think about maybe buying a house. And then they look a little bit, and then they pull back, and then they look a little more, and they pull back. They're trying to get a feel for what they're going to do. Sometimes people are 100% committed to the idea of buying a house, and sometimes the thought has to grow on them. So by following up and following through, catching that person a couple of weeks or even a couple of months down the road, then you can find that these people are now ready, willing, and able to talk with you about what their plans are, and you'll be able to help them. Because at the end of the day, this is all about opportunities. This is all about understanding that whether I go out and cold call or I start to filter through somebody else's connections, I need to be doing something all the time to fill those 2 hours or more each day that I'm supposed to be prospecting. I'm not supposed to be out there thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be executing the plan. And when it comes to a realtor plan, if you don't have a plan for what you do with the stuff that they miss, you're not really bringing a tremendous amount of value to the table. Yes, it's nice that you bring in these people and you get them closed after they've referred them to you. But how much more impressive is it when you bring somebody back? How do you think that realtor feels when somebody that they discarded comes back in the form of a client who completes a transaction and becomes a commission? That's money that they've already thrown away. It's almost free. How valuable does that become? That you have a system in place that helps find those opportunities. So we have to look at this and we have to say to ourselves, we have to maximize the opportunities from our buyers. Okay? And that's why when we talk about the realtor relationship, that I said we have to talk to them, and again, I gave you a scenario here where we're collecting opportunities for them on Mondays and Thursdays. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, over the weekend, they're generally going to see new opportunities. So by Monday, they may have some people that made offers on homes or began the looking process. Don't wait for them to call you. Have a schedule by which you call them and collect, and I call it collecting the news. How many new people did they meet over the weekend that you need to speak with? Sometimes it works as a memory jogger. Sometimes they would have referred you and they forgot, or they were going to and the phone rang, and they don't remember whether they did or they didn't. So don't leave it up to them entirely. You be the one to take the initiative and call them on Monday and just touch base. Hey, anybody you meet over the weekend that I need to speak with? Same thing on Thursdays. Well, Thursday is kind of twofold, because on Thursday you're supposed to be communicating with every one of your pre-approvals to see if they saw property the weekend before or they're scheduled to see property the coming weekend. After you've made all those calls to your pre-approvals to see how the hunting process is going, now you need to be calling every one of your realtor referral partners to see who they've already scheduled to show property to that weekend that you haven't spoke to yet. It's also a great time to remind them of the customers that you've already been working with together, saying, yes, I spoke to the Joneses earlier today. I know that they're looking forward to seeing the house with you on Saturday. Or I spoke with the Smiths earlier today, and I'm kind of surprised they haven't seen a house in the last few weeks, and they're not scheduled to see anything this weekend. Sometimes the realtor just forgets these people, and sometimes you're the difference. And instead of waiting for that realtor to call back, instead of them going and finding another realtor, you bring your realtor back into the mix. Now verify and improve everyone. Right now there are a lot of people out there that have pre-approvals that you and I know can't qualify for a loan, but they got approved by somebody, and that person either didn't look at tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs, or bank statements. They talked to the people on the phone, they ran a quick credit report, they listened to what the people told them, and they issued a pre-approval. How scary is that? What if you have a customer that's like that? What if that person is going to sell a home? Here is the thing is, even the listings. The reason you want to get in front of their listings is not only to help that agent market that property and find a buyer, but wouldn't it be nice to be in communication with that seller and make sure that their goals can be met? If those people have been in the house 4, 5, 6, 7 years, lending has changed a lot. Suppose they bought their last house with a 55 back-end ratio, and they're thinking they're going to go on and do the same thing for the next house. Guess what? That's not happening, is it? And what would happen if those people didn't go through the process and didn't know what they were truly qualified for? They may buy a house that is less expensive than they could have afforded or more expensive than they can qualify for. And what happens if they're under the impression that they can buy something that they can't? And they agree and they sign a contract to sell their current home. only to find out down the road that they can't qualify for the loan that they want and they need to buy their next house. That can be devastating. So getting in front, verify and approve everyone brings value to the realtor and to the customer, because you know how to do your job correctly. You know what's important. You know that every detail matters now. And one of the things that you have to do with your realtor referral partners is define the process for them. Show them what and how it is successful. Share with them how you now go through the process of approving a borrower. Share with them what information that you need to collect from that borrower and why. Explain to the agents how you review each individual case and that what a deal really looks like. Show them your timing, like the 3x3, on how complete your follow-up is, so that everybody that you're coming in contact with, you're staying in touch with or trying to, so that you have the opportunity to bring that potential client back to that realtor. If you're not sharing that type of information, if you're not sharing that type of strategy, then you're really putting yourself at risk of not maintaining a valued relationship. You're not putting yourself in a position to maximize the opportunities, not only just for you, but for your realtor partner. Understand, you know these things that you're being taught here today and again next week. Many times the realtors don't know this information. Nobody sits down and explains these things. They think they may or may not have a follow-up system that works just great for them. They don't know any better. You can provide a tremendous amount of value. You can put yourself in a position where you can out-refer your realtor referral partners 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 to 1. And when you're out referring, when you're bringing more people to the table than they are bringing to the table, those people never leave that relationship. They never shop you. They never go anyplace else. They can't be wooed by someone or something because they understand the value in that relationship. We've got to look to maximize the opportunities for our listings. We have to have the conversation about how you getting involved early can save them from 2 to 3.25% on the next purchase. We talk about that in a very specific way. We don't know what their credit score is. They may not even know what their credit score is. Most people don't know that their credit score has a direct connection to the cost of borrowing money. There are some loan programs you can't even qualify for depending upon your credit score. But we all know that the range on a Fannie Mae or an FHA or a VA loan is 2% top to bottom, from the minimum acceptable standard to where there's no penalty for the credit score. There's a 2% cost, and that's the actual point value based upon the percentage of the interest rate. You guys will look at that as the difference in the yield spread. On a Freddie Mac loan, it's up to 3.25%. On Freddie Mac, if you run loans through Freddie Mac, the acceptable measure or the range at which the person can still qualify for a Freddie Mac loan, but the price reflected in there is 3.25%, more expensive on the yield curve from the lowest qualifying score to the highest qualifying score. That's a lot of money. And when somebody lists their house for sale, depending upon their market, you getting to them early and looking at that credit and helping them be as good a borrower as they can possibly be, you can save them real money. Third-party endorsements. There's a simple third-party endorsement letter that endorses that realtor. It congratulates that person for listing their home with that realtor. It shares with them that you're part of that realtor's team, that you're going to be working a specific program to help that realtor sell that house in the shortest possible time for the most possible money. And then as part of that team and as part of that effort, you're going to help make them the best borrower they can be for their next purchase. Home finance guides. We all have technology that can explain to people the cost of buying a home. Home finance guides are a very simple tool to provide financing costs for that particular specific property. Show them what a 30-year fixed or a 15-year fixed or a 20-year fixed looks like. Show them what 20% down or 30% down or 5% down looks like. Show them the differences. It could be as simple as one loan program or as complicated as you want to make it with a number of different possibilities. I suggest that you don't go to more than 4 or 5 and dilute the power because it just becomes confusing. But having a tangible, physical remembrance of the property available to people as they see the home often can be the difference between those people coming back to that house and taking a second look at that house and forgetting about that house completely. It also doesn't hurt to have your financing information and your contact information out there. So even if that's not the home that they choose to buy, you may have an opportunity to get in front of that loan. Also, home finance guides make a great vehicle to get in front of that seller. Call them on the phone and ask them, how are they holding out on home finance guides? Do they need more? You'd be happy to run off a few and have them delivered or bring them over yourself. At the same time, possibly applying for the job of being their next loan officer. Whatever it takes to get in the door, to get in front of an opportunity. Help us pick your neighbor. Working with the realtor to engage the neighborhood, to talk to the neighbors, to make them aware of what's going on and what you'd like them to do. Again, every time you go out into a neighborhood and you knock on 40 doors and speak to 40 people about that house that's listed for sale, statistically speaking, in the old days, you'd find about 2/3 of a transaction every time you did it, a new listing or a buyer for that current listing. Today, that's even improved. Why? Because going back to the forever home strategy, we know that 43% of all the people who are living in a home that have a mortgage that's over 4%, they have equity in their house, and they have credit scores in a position that they could refinance. So now that number is immensely larger than it used to be. But even if it was only 2/3 of a transaction every time you did it, can you imagine every time your realtor lists 3 houses and you go out and talk to the neighbors, you could replace 2 out of 3 of those listings just by talking to those people? You'd have to be crazy not to take advantage of those opportunities. And I get it, most people don't. Technology. A lot of loan officers and realtors share common technologies, whether they be call capture, text capture, websites. All sorts of different technologies are out there that connect the mortgage professional and the realtor together. I'm not saying that you have to have one of these things. I'm saying you have to be aware that they exist. If you and your branch or your company are using one of these or more of these technologies, you need to be well educated in it, how to use it, and how you're going to follow up with it. If you don't make it easy for your realtor to engage that technology, they're not going to use it with you because it'll be too much work. So the point is if you have it, know how to use it, and be proficient. If you're not going to do those things, then don't bring a technology to the table because it'll just be something extra that nobody's using, and that doesn't help anybody. So here's where we go, and there is going to be, this homework is really important that you guys face and look at. It's a good place to make the break here. Knowing what you know now, what is your written plan for your agents' buyers? What do you do to get in front of those buyers? Are you going to follow the plan that we have outlined? Do you have a completely different plan? As you well know with me, I have some requirements. If the plan's not written down, it doesn't exist. If it's not scheduled, it won't happen. And if we don't have a deadline by when it's supposed to be completed by, it won't get done. So your task this week for your homework is knowing that, what is your plan for your agents' buyers? How are you going to get in front of as many of those people as possible? What are you going to do to either pre-approve or to certify their existing approval so that that agent knows that those people that they are working with are capable of buying a house in the price range that they're looking, and they can finance it in a way that makes sense for them. Number two, what is your plan for your agent's listings? You have to look back at the information that we have shared, so that whether it be here or back on the CDs. Am I just going to send a letter to every one of my agents' listings applying for the job of being their next loan officer? That would be better than nothing. That would be about as minimal as you could possibly be. Your agent gives you the listing, you send them a letter asking to apply for the job, and maybe they call you. It's still better than nothing. Are you going to do a third-party endorsement letter endorsing that realtor and offering an array of products and services that you're going to provide with your agent? Are you going to do help us pick your new neighbor? Are you going to do neighbors only open house? Are you going to work with some sort of technology? What's your plan? What's the schedule of those activities? If you don't have a plan and it's not in writing and it's not scheduled on how it all happens and you're not quantifying a result to see what came of it, you don't have a plan. As we've talked about before, how do you target new agents? Are you looking for new agents? Do you have your current agents introducing you to new agents? If you don't have any agents, are you using some tool or technology to find out the agents in your marketplace? Are you going to a site like Realtor.com and searching an area you'd like to lend money and seeing who the agents are that have listed houses? And then seeing if any of them, they have more than one listing? It shows up on Realtor.com. There are other services that are free where you can find out exactly what an agent's doing, what their last year's production was, whether they were listings or whether they were buyers, their average sale. How are you identifying who your targets are? And how are you pursuing them? And on what schedule are you doing it? And what are you going to offer them? What sets you apart? What do you do with those buyers? What do you do with those sellers? Are you incubating those people to bring them back? What value do you bring to the table? How do you track the referrals from your agents? When an agent sends you a referral, what happens? If you don't have a plan of action in writing, again, remember what I told you, 3 times in 3 days. The only time I alter that 3 times in 3 days is when an agent or anybody else refers me somebody. Anytime an agent or any referral partner refers me somebody, I thank the person for the referral, and then I begin calling that person. And I call them every day for 3 days. If that person doesn't call me back, I immediately call the referral partner and ask them how to proceed. I tell them simply, I thank you for the Jones referral. I've called the Joneses 3 times in 3 days. They have yet to call me back. How would you like me to proceed? Maybe the agent knows that these people are out of town. Maybe these agents know that these people are just a little sloppy in returning their call, and they will tell you, just keep calling them until you reach them. But what happens here is at least you brought up the subject to your agent. Because if you bring it up first, then your agent is aware of it. Because here's what often happens. You call. They either forget that you called, or they never called you back, or they're not going to call you back. And then when the agent asks, did you speak to the loan officer, they're going to say, no, we never spoke to them. They never called us. Well, that's not very fair. It's a bad reflection upon you. When you have a written policy on it, you call 3 times in 3 days, and then you call back that agent or that referral partner, and you ask them, how would you like me to proceed? And then you call them, and you let them know at whatever interval they have suggested that you have not still heard back from that person. It's very difficult for that referral partner to believe that client when they say, well, you've never called me. Because the reality of it is you've made that effort. So how do you track the referrals from your agents? The other thing is, are you keeping score? Again, do you have an agent that refers you 5 or 6 times a month and you never close a deal for them because those people are never creditworthy? You have somebody who refers you once a month and everybody that they refer you close? How are you tracking the quality of those referrals? And by the way, is all of this in writing? Because I'm telling you what, you should be building your book of business every day. That 3-ring binder with those plastic page protectors, everything that we discuss needs to be put into your book of business, documented, tangible, touchable, so it can be seen by your clients and your referral partners and yourself as a description of what your work is, what your business looks like. It's very important that we engage in these steps, and it's very important that we work on building this. Some of you are not going to do all of these things, but you need to be aware of them. Because if you're not aware of them, then how do you know it's a possibility or an opportunity? And once again, if you need help, just ask. I don't want to leave anybody behind. This is way, way too powerful a piece of information here. There's way too much dedication, both in this effort and in the CDs and all the work that I have done in the past, as well as all the work that my clients do in building this. We've got way too much data that proves that this stuff really works, that it's a game changer. It makes your life easier and better. So I don't want you lost in this section, and if you need help, I need you to let me know. But you do have to do the work. You do have to roll up your sleeves, and you do have to make the commitment to this outcome, because it's not going to happen by itself. So once again, I thank you for your time. I appreciate your commitment to the program. If there's anything that you need from us, please let us know, and we will speak to you again for the next session. Have yourselves a great day, and we'll be talking to you soon.